Welcome to Garden Delights. I'm Susan Howington, Family Consumer Science Agent with the Henry County Cooperative Extension, partnership with the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension. Today we're going to talk about tomatoes. We're going to make a basil tomato quiche, and you're going to hear from Frank Hancock, our Agriculture and Natural Resource Agent. He's going to talk about that garden, getting it ready, because the ground is exactly where it needs to be. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights. Welcome back to Garden Delights. We're talking about tomatoes today, and we're going to make a wonderful tomato and basil quiche. But let's talk about those tomatoes. I know that Frank has been working in that garden in our office, and our tomatoes are up, and I'm so excited. I can't wait for our tomatoes in our own garden to come up because I love tomatoes. And the sooner you can get your tomatoes planted, the better off you're going to be as far as those tomatoes coming in. And why do you want to eat tomatoes? They are so good for you. They are loaded with vitamin A and vitamin C. And when I say vitamin C, I mean a lot of vitamin C. They also have really good potassium in them, and they are cholesterol, fat-free, low sodium. So what can I say? And just a medium little tomato like this, 30 calories. So you could eat 2 of these and your calories would be really low. So you can see this is a wonderful nutritional vegetable or a fruit, just depending on how you want to call it. But I love tomatoes, so I look forward to them. You know, you can eat them just like an apple if you want to, or you can eat them in salads, or you can make that wonderful tomato sandwich, so you're looking forward to it. But they are really good and they're loaded, so just think about that when the tomatoes start coming in. Now, when you're in your garden, you're going to look at your tomatoes and you're going to make sure they're ripe. You're going to look for firm, shiny looking tomatoes. And if they have some blemishes on them, if you're picking your own, you know right then you're going to have to do something with them very quickly. But at the store, you want to do the same thing. When you're picking your tomatoes, look for firm, shiny, nice looking tomatoes when you're buying those. And they're going to be different prices, different locations, so you'll just have to figure out where you want to buy your tomatoes. Now, storage. Tomatoes, don't store them in the refrigerator when you first pick them or when you buy them from the grocery store. People tend to take them and put them right in the refrigerator, and you don't want to do that because it takes away from that wonderful taste and smell, to me, of a wonderful tomato. So leave them out. If you can leave them out, you can leave them out for about a week, and you can watch them. You'll be able to tell if they're starting to go bad. Your choice is put them in the refrigerator to prolong them just a little bit longer, or you want to freeze them because they freeze wonderful, and then you can bring them out in the winter months and make those wonderful stews or soups or whatever you're wanting to make out there. So just keep that in mind, that if you don't know what you're going to do with them in that week's time, and if they're coming in a lot, then you can can them also. If you don't want to freeze them, you can can them, and to me, canning a tomato is wonderful. You can make that tomato soup later, and you talking about fresh tasting, they will be fresh tasting tomato soup. So keep that in mind. So when we come back, you're going to hear from Frank. He's going to talk a little bit about our garden in the back of our building. And hopefully, if you hadn't started, this is a perfect time to start. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights.
Okay, today I want to spend just a minute or two here and talk about a real life problem that you run into in your garden, and then we're going to just talk general about our garden and how it's progressing along here. Weeds are a problem, and we recommend that you use your hoe to get rid of most of your weeds or cultivate them out. Don't use any herbicide around the garden. And I will get a lot of calls as the season progresses here, people bringing their tomato plants in that have been damaged by herbicide, either 2,4-D, dicamba, or in some cases Roundup. And you got to be careful with those kind of things. Some of your lawn chemicals that you put out that have 2,4-D in them, you need to read the label. It'll tell you not to put it out above a certain temperature. If you put it out when it's too hot, 2,4-D and dicamba can volatilize and just come up off of the ground and blow right through your tomatoes and kill your tomatoes. Roundup, tomatoes are real sensitive to Roundup, and Roundup will spread further than you think. Now, I've got some Bermuda grass in a bed here that we're going to do some stuff with. We've already worked on it pretty hard to get rid of it, but I still got some coming up around the edge. So I'm going to show you one method of how to use a little bit of Roundup here without killing my tomato plants that are right here behind it, at least I hope so. One thing you need to be aware of on your spray bottles, when you buy them, they usually have 2 settings. Now Roundup, in the Roundup bottle, it generally has big droplets in either setting, so they've tried to make it so it doesn't spread too much. But glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup, and you find it in all kind of brand names and all kind of bottles. So the thing you need to be careful of, if you set it on the spray side, like this bottle, this is not Roundup right here, but you'll get this spray and you can see that drifting across there. And so you don't ever want to be spraying Roundup with this kind of a setting on your spray nozzle. Now it has another setting here that would be better, and it's more of a direct spray. The bigger the droplets are, the less drift you get. So if you're using the setting that's got the fine particles, it's going to drift. Whether you see it drifting or not, I promise you, it's going across in the wind and you're going to see it drifting. So so now we're going to get the Roundup here, and we're going to work a little bit on some Bermuda grass. I took my Roundup bottle, I went and got me a funnel. I cut the funnel off so it fit over the nozzle on the Roundup bottle. And then I tied it with some pipe cleaners here, but we also put a little bit of hot glue on it. But anyway, you get this funnel attached so that when you get ready to spray, you control your spray within this funnel. So I might kill a little round spot here around my Bermuda, but I don't have to worry about this drifting into my tomatoes, which are back here behind us. So I've got this Bermuda right here that if I get here where we can see what we're doing. So I'm able to direct my spray at the Bermuda. There's even some up here in this bed. We're going to go after it too. And you can see how this Roundup actually foams up a little bit. And so that gives me the opportunity to use my Roundup, big droplets, controlled by this funnel, so I'm not worried about drift when I'm using my Roundup. And this is just so much fun, getting rid of this Bermuda grass. I'll just keep doing it. All right, so that's just a little note here about how you can do some things and try to control. But if you go out there and spray herbicide and you're not thinking about drift, then you'll be in my office with some dead plants trying to figure out what to do. As far as our garden is progressing here, if we look down the line, our kale is just about finished up, but we still got a lot of kale to eat. The hot weather is going to eventually do away with our kale, and we'll plant something else in that bed. Our tomatoes have been planted. They're doing well. I did lose one of them. I don't know what happened to it, but it broke off, and I'm waiting to see if it's going to come back, and if it doesn't, I'll plant another one down there. But all the rest of them are doing fine. I planted okra in the far bed down here, and it's coming up. Soil temperature is important when you start planting these seeds, and our soil temperature has gotten to the right temperature. You can, so I planted that okra last Friday, and this is Wednesday, and it's already coming up because the soil was right. We also got a little rain on it in the meantime, which didn't hurt anything. I've got sorghum over here that came up about 4 days after I planted it. I've got sunflowers that we planted to attract some of our insects, and the sunflowers are all coming up. In fact, I'm ready to plant a couple more rows of sunflowers. I do that for the leaf-footed bugs, so they'll have plenty to eat and not get on my tomatoes. That's kind of where we are today. I've still got a couple of beds here to plant. We looked at our irrigation system last time, and it's in these beds, and we'll expand it as soon as we get plants up, so we get the water where we want it to be. It's also connected to our tomatoes there. And maybe next time we'll take another look at this bed right here, and we'll see this Bermuda grass gone. You just can't hardly pull it up. It's rooted in there so well. Now, we did dig this bed out. This bed was totally overrun with this Bermuda grass. We dug it out, we dug down deep, we put down a piece of weed barrier cloth, and then we filled the bed back in. So what I'm dealing with now is just the little stragglers around the edges here that still want to come back, and we're going to keep on till none of it's coming back. And that's about what we wanted to talk about today, just a little update. Still time to get your garden planted. The soil temperatures are good. Stuff's germinating really fast when we put it down. So we're going to go inside now and see what Susan is fixing, and we'll eat.
Welcome back to Garden Delights. Today we're talking about tomatoes, and I'm going to be making a tomato basil quiche. It tastes really, really good, and once you start baking it, it's going to smell really good. The first thing you want to do is you want about a deep dish pie shell, and you're going to bake it in your oven for about 10 minutes, because what you're trying to do is just get that shiny part off and to make sure that it's going to not seep through. And then you want to also make sure you poke some holes with your fork so it kind of stays together. So you're going to bake that for about 10 minutes, then you're going to cool it off because you don't want to pour it into a hot pie shell. So cool that off, and then once you've done that, you're going to need about a cup of milk, and this is a 1% milk. Then you're going to add 4 eggs to that milk. So we're going to go ahead and do that and blend that together. And I'm going to add a couple more things. And if you are trying to watch your cholesterol and you don't want to put eggs in it, you can also use a cholesterol substitute eggs, and then you're not eating as much. So there's options out there if you want to substitute your eggs. But it's going to be 4 eggs for this, so we're going to go ahead and put those in. All right, we got 4 eggs, and I am going to take a whisk, and I'm going to whisk these eggs around because I want them to blend in with the milk before I add any other ingredients. So we're going to do that first. And this just kind of helps with the quiche to make it a little bit more fluffy. So when you're putting it all together, you have the egg where it will blend out in that quiche. And I have one yolk that just doesn't want to get blended up in there with the other ones. And I have 1% milk, but if you really were trying to watch your weight, you can also substitute the fat-free milk, and it still would work. So it's up to you as far as that goes. So this is a 1% milk. And I think I have my eggs mixed up. I just want to make sure. And you can see as I've mixed them, they've become pretty bubbly, and that's what you want. Also, you're going to add some basil. This is dried basil. If you wanted to add fresh basil, it's 2 tablespoons chopped up. This is dried basil, so this is 2 teaspoons. Also in here is a ½ teaspoon of salt. So I'm going to go ahead and dump that into the egg mixture. Also, you're going to, depending on if you don't like onions, you could leave it out, but this is onions chopped up. These are the green onions. This is about 3 of them, and the recipe is going to tell you 3 to 4, so it's up to you on how many you want to put in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in there. And so you're going to mix this up. And I'm just going to make sure the basil kind of gets mixed up in there. And to me, it's good just to kind of let it sit here because we're going to chop up some tomato and put it also in this quiche. But you will put this part, the liquid part, in first before you ever put the tomatoes on, because you want the tomatoes at the very top of the quiche. All right, so this is all mixed up. So this is the pie shell, and you're just going to pour it in there. And if you want a little pepper, you are good to add just a little bit of pepper. So I'm just going to sprinkle just a little bit on top, just to give it a little flavor. And it's up to you. You can leave it off. And the salt, if you wanted to, you probably could leave that off too. So what we need to do now is I have shredded up some, let me put this over here to get it out of my way. This is about a cup of shredded cheese. And it's a low-fat cheese, so you can use a low-fat cheese. And what I'm going to need now is I am going to need to take a knife and cut this tomato up. Now the recipe is going to tell you may need 2 to 3 or 1 to 2 tomatoes. So depending on your recipe, and also depending on how you slice your tomato, as far as the thickness goes, depends on how much of you're going to need, because you can see this is not a large pie shell, so I'm going to cut my tomato slices pretty thin. And what I'm going to do is try to get at least 6 to 7 to go into my quiche. So I'm just going to kind of cut it really, really thin. And if you want to cut it thicker, you could. That means that you may need more tomatoes if you cut it thicker. And so I'm just going to take this and keep slicing my tomatoes to make sure I have enough. And I'm going to try my best to keep them where they're all intact, where I have a nice circle. And you could, to make it even look nice too, you can take a tomato and cut it in halves if you wanted to. So it's either way. I'm going to see if I need that other end. I may not. So the next step you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and put the cheese into the quiche at the top. So you're layering this part at the top because you're hoping to keep those tomatoes at the very top of your quiche. So I'm going to sprinkle the cheese on first, the very top. Make sure I have it kind of layered out because I don't want it all in the center. Okay, and then you're just going to take your tomatoes, and I'm going to start with the center, and you're just going to lay them out around just like this, because once it bakes, they will stay at the top. So it really depends on how many you want. And I'm going to be able to put one more. I'm going to slide this one over just a little bit and lay that one on top. And that is all it takes to make the tomato basil quiche. You're going to bake it around 400 for about 15 minutes. And that's just going to kind of get it started, to get those eggs to cook and to kind of come together to make it firm. And then you're going to lower your temperature to about 350. Give and take your stove. It's going to be your oven about 20 to 25 minutes. And then you'll know too, the center of it should be firm. When you take it out, look at it. And just make sure the center, and you may use a toothpick or whatever you need to do to make sure the eggs are completely done. And so once you're done that, you have a wonderful tomato and basil quiche. And to me, quiche can be ate not just for breakfast, it's an all day long thing that you can eat. It's going to smell wonderful, it's going to taste wonderful. We'll see you back in just a little bit, and Frank and I will be tasting this quiche. See you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights. Welcome back to Garden Delights. Frank, I have made a basil tomato quiche, and I'm so sorry, but I love quiche so much I had to start eating mine.
It looks like something's missing there.
I know, I just couldn't help it.
But I was late, you know, I was out in the garden planting some more seed.
I heard that's what you were doing, so I owe you your slice now, so I'm going to go ahead and get your slice for you.
All right.
The tomatoes.
Yours is bigger, but that's okay.
Well, you know, I told you how much I like quiche, so I just had to start, and I just couldn't help myself.
That's good.
It is good. And the tomatoes are really good. Of course, I'm looking forward to your tomatoes and my tomatoes in my garden, too, to eat when they get ready.
I talked about killing some weeds A lot of people call me, you know, because their Bermuda grass has got dead spots in it. I got some out back in a raised bed.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have a single dead spot in it anywhere, so I showed them how to get it out without killing the tomatoes and all that are around it. So we won't know till next month if it worked or not. But I think we saved the tomatoes and killed the Bermuda grass.
I hope so, because I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed, because I'm looking forward to the variety you have out there that we can taste.
And you know, we also farmers market starts up last Thursday in May, so can come get some tomatoes at the farmers market.
That's exactly right, and we have.
What I'm going to do if I kill those out back.
I'm with you, but I hope I have some in my garden too that we can share. So
right.
Check out the website for this wonderful tomato and basil quiche. And Frank and I will see you next time on Garden Delight.